There is a moment in every Warriors season when the conversation stops being about talent on paper and starts being about who is actually holding this thing together night after night. That is where Golden State is right now. And as wild as it sounds, D'Anthony Melton has forced his way into that discussion in a very serious way. Not as a nice surprise, not as a useful role guy, but as someone who has become central to whether this team can stay afloat while Steph Curry works his way back. A lot of fans still look at Draymond Green as the automatic answer when you ask who matters most behind Steph, and normally that is fair. But this season has made the question a lot more uncomfortable, because Melton is no longer giving the Warriors small contributions. He is giving them real control over games. That performance against Washington said a lot more than the box score. 27 points, efficient all night, and the part that really stands out is that he did it without leaning on the three ball. He got there by reading the floor, cutting at the right time, getting into the middle, making smart shots, and never forcing the game. It felt calm, and that matters. Golden State has looked shaky for stretches without Curry, and when things get tight, the value of a guard who can settle possessions without slowing everything down becomes huge. That is what Melton has been giving them. He is defending, creating, finishing, and making this roster look more balanced than it really is. Warriors fans, subscribe to the channel because we follow every move this team makes during the season and the offseason. Then you get to the number that has people around the fan base paying closer attention. Plus 195. Best on the team. Better than Curry. Better than Draymond. Better than everybody else on the roster. That does not happen by accident over the course of a season. That is impact. And when respected voices around the Bay start saying Melton has been one of the co-stars of the Warriors' biggest games, it lands because people watching closely can see it too. He fits the system in a way that feels natural. He can guard up top, play off Steph, move without wasting dribbles, and still carry more offense when the main engine is missing. Players with that kind of fit do not stay cheap for long. That is where this turns into a front office problem. Melton is heading toward free agency, and nobody around the league expects him to look at a low-value option when the market is about to reward the way he has played. The Warriors have seen this movie before. A guard comes in, thrives in the system, proves he is worth real money, then leaves because the math gets ugly. Fans remember Dante DiVincenzo for a reason, and the scary part for Golden State is that Melton may be even harder to replace because of how cleanly he slides next to Curry while still giving the team something when Curry is unavailable. If you lose that kind of player, you are not just losing depth, you are losing structure. Now add Steph back into the picture. The signs on his recovery are encouraging, and if he returns with Melton still playing at this level, Golden State becomes a much tougher team than people want to admit. That is why the pressure around this decision is real. This is not just about one hot stretch or one contract negotiation. It is about whether the Warriors are paying attention to what this season has revealed about their own roster. Right? With Steph until the end, if you still believe this team has another real fight left in it, because what happens next with Melton could end up telling us a lot about how serious Golden State is about protecting this window before it starts closing for good. The part that makes this even more interesting is that Draymond's value and Melton's value are not really fighting for the same space, even if fans naturally compare them. Draymond still gives this team its defensive voice, its edge, its ability to organize chaos when possessions start to break down. He still sees the floor 2 steps ahead, still quarterbacks coverages, still knows how to drag a group back into a game with one sequence that shifts the temperature in the building. But the Warriors already know what Draymond is. They know how his presence changes them. What they are learning in real time is how dangerous it is to lose a player like Melton when the roster around Steph needs connective tissue more than ever. That is why this question hits so hard right now. In the abstract, Draymond remains one of the most important players this franchise has had in the modern era. In the present, in this specific stretch, with Curry sidelined and the offense needing somebody who can create stability without hijacking possessions, Melton has started to feel less replaceable than anyone expected. That is not disrespect to Draymond. That is just the reality of what Golden State has been living through over these last few weeks. Melton has been covering cracks that would normally split this team open. He has been the release valve, the perimeter stopper, the extra handler, the guy who keeps the game from getting away when things start leaning the wrong direction. And this is where front offices can talk themselves into mistakes. They can convince themselves that a breakout stretch is temporary, that another mid-level signing can patch the same hole, that a younger flyer or a cheaper veteran can recreate the same effect. Usually that is where regret begins, because the league is full of talented players, but it is not full of players who make sense next to Steph Curry without disrupting the entire ecosystem. That is the real value here. Melton does not need the offense bent around him. He does not need special treatment. He just reads the moment, slides into the right gap, defends his tail off, and gives Golden State exactly the kind of two-way steadiness this roster has been missing far too often. There is also a bigger message hidden inside all of this. When a veteran core starts getting older, the players who matter most are not always the biggest names. Sometimes it is the one who keeps everything functional between the headlines. Sometimes it is the guy who lets the stars stay who they are without forcing them to cover for weaknesses every other trip down the floor. That is why the idea of losing Melton this summer feels a lot more serious than it might have a few months ago. If he walks, the Warriors are not just losing production. They are losing one of the clearest signs that this roster can still be reshaped into something that makes sense around Steph's remaining years. And the fan base can feel that tension already. You can hear it every time people start talking about payroll, priorities, and how many real chances this organization has left to get things right around Curry. Golden State has lived off smart reads for too long to miss one this obvious. If this front office lets another clean fit leave the building and then spends the next year trying to recreate him by committee, people are going to look back at this stretch and say the warning signs were right there in front of everybody. Comment, "The Bay still believes," if you think this team has one more serious push in it, and subscribe right now, because the next few moves around this roster could tell us exactly whether the Warriors are planning one more real run with Steph or quietly drifting toward decisions fans are not going to like once the full picture comes into view. The timing of all this is what makes it impossible to ignore. This is not a conversation for July, when everyone can sit back and pretend there is plenty of time to sort it out. This is happening while the standings are still moving, while Steph is trying to get all the way right, and while every meaningful game is putting more pressure on the people upstairs. The Warriors do not have the luxury of treating Melton like a side issue anymore. He has played too well in too many important spots for that kind of thinking. And once a player starts showing he can swing winning in multiple ways, his price does not stay hidden for long. Around the league, teams notice that fast. They notice guards who defend without gambling, who move the ball without sticking the offense in mud, and who can still go get a bucket when the possession starts to wobble. That is why the comparison to Draymond keeps pulling people in, even if the better question may be different. It may not be about who is the better player overall, because that answer still leans toward Draymond when you factor in everything he means to the identity of the franchise. The sharper question is who feels more fragile in terms of team building. Draymond is already tied into the foundation. Melton is the piece that can disappear if the numbers do not line up, and that is where the anxiety comes from. Golden State knows exactly how much harder life gets when the rotation loses one of its cleanest two-way fits. The offense gets heavier, the defense gets thinner on the perimeter, the margin for error around Steph gets smaller. Those are the kinds of losses that do not always make the loudest noise on the day they happen, but they stay with a team for months. There is also something else here that fans should not brush aside. Melton has not looked like a player carrying himself as if he is just passing through. He has looked comfortable in the system, comfortable with the responsibility, and comfortable in moments where the team badly needed somebody to steady the pace. That matters. Players do not always settle into Golden State's rhythm that quickly, especially when the season starts getting messy and expectations turn heavier. He has. And when a player finds that kind of rhythm in this environment, you have to think hard before letting the market decide his future for you. Because once free agency opens, sentiment disappears fast. Then it turns into bids, leverage, and a front office having to explain why a player who clearly fit ended up somewhere else. The other part nobody should ignore is how this affects Steph's final competitive window. Every move from here gets judged through that lens, fairly or not. Curry is not asking this franchise for a long rebuild or a patient reset. The whole point is to keep finding players who make the present matter. Melton has done that. He has helped the Warriors survive when survival was not supposed to be the standard. He has made the roster feel more connected. He has given them another serious guard who can live in big minutes without the game speeding him up. Those are not extras. For this team, at this stage, that is essential. If the Warriors are serious about giving Steph another real shot instead of just selling hope around nostalgia, then decisions like this one are exactly where that seriousness has to show up. And this is why these next few weeks are going to say a lot more than the final record. They are going to reveal what Golden State truly believes about its own future, about its payroll discipline, and about how many chances are left to keep this era from fading into almosts. Subscribe right now, because this is the kind of story that changes fast and usually before the national shows catch up to it. Once the real signals start coming out around Melton, Curry, and the Warriors' off-season priorities, the tone around this franchise could shift in a hurry, and the people following closely now are going to understand the next move long before everybody else starts reacting to it. If the Golden State Warriors are your team, subscribe now so you never miss what's happening behind the scenes. So when people ask who matters more to the Warriors right now, the honest answer may depend on what part of the problem you are looking at. Draymond still shapes the soul of the team, but Melton has started shaping its survival, and that is why this story feels bigger every day. Golden State can still talk itself into one more push, still believe Steph's return changes the mood, still trust the veterans to steady the room, but keeping the right pieces around that hope is where this gets real. Right? The dynasty is not over, if you believe the Warriors still have another chapter left. And subscribe to the channel right now, because the next Warriors update could bring the kind of news that changes everything around Steph, Melton, and this front office faster than most fans expect.